Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Livingston.
Welcome to the Rangers Journey.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Journal on the 22nd of November. Post-match reaction to Rangers 2-1 win over Livingston. We said in the pre-match we were hoping for a nice routine victory. It wasn't quite that, but we get the points at the end of the day, which is the most important thing. To talk over the match with me, I've got two of my favourite podders here to talk with you. First of all, we've got Jock. Welcome, Jock. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Good to be here. I'm glad to get another 3 points on the board and keep that run going that we worked so hard to get before the international break. So it's good to keep the momentum going forward.
Absolutely. And my partner in crime over on the members only videos, we have Marty. How you doing, mate?
Oh. Fine, thank you. Yourself?
Good stuff. So kicking off, going off into the game, we obviously we had a chance to touch on the lineup before. Did you guys start with yourself, Jock? Did you have any particular thoughts on the lineup when you saw it? Were you happy with what you saw?
I think it's kind of what we really expected, wasn't it? Because obviously because of the injuries to Suter and Cornelius, the two sort of the mainstays of that defensive lineup. You kind of knew that somebody was going to have to come in. Now, was it going to be Fernandez or was it going to be Enciala? So Enciala made the bench. He's went with Fernandez. And I say, obviously, we'll talk about it later on, but he's obviously contributed straight away and used his height to his advantage, and something I think we'll see probably going forward. And while there's these two guys are out, so no real surprises for me there. Danilo up front, Gassama, all kind of the starting lineup. I think he's obviously Rose trying to pick a core and try and build on that core set of players, and that's certainly the midfield. And instead of left and right back are core players, and obviously bottom as well. So for me, no real surprise. We just had to chop and change, obviously, the hands forced because of the injuries that come back from the international break.
Yeah, absolutely. What about yourself, Marty? What were your thoughts when you saw the lineup?
A bit like what's already been said, no real surprises. I was a little bit surprised by Jigga being put in. I thought there would be Enciala brought in to give him an opportunity coming back from injury, but other than that, it was as expected.
Yeah, I think a few changes I was saying forced on the manager. That being said, I thought we opened the game pretty well. The first, I would say, maybe 10 minutes, certainly, maybe 10, 15 minutes. We came out the blocks pretty quickly. We were passing the ball around pretty quickly. There was a lot of nice one-touch movement. It looked like we were really going to take the game to Livingston. And we get a reward, not necessarily from the play itself, but we get an early reward nonetheless, just before the 10-minute mark. Our new set-piece coach perhaps showing his value already. A typical, I would say, probably floated in corner from Tavernier, Jock, and then you've got the big man who's coming in, picking up where he left off against Alba with an excellent header, and we were 1-0 up.
Yeah, that's it. And we all talked about it, pre-match and then in the pod, the pods during the week about this new guy coming in. What's he going to bring? Hopefully, we'll start to see variations in the set plays, and we've certainly seen that today. There was a lot of different variations and different types of ball played in, floaters, whip balls in, and we benefited massively from that, because when you've got a guy that's 6'4" and has the frame and the build and the physicality of Fernandez, he should be somebody you should be aiming for, or at least give them the opportunity, because as you say against Dala, he showed that he has that ability, and the header was great to underside the crossbar and go in, if I'm right, so again, it's something we want to see more of. So the new guy that everybody was sort of apprehensive about, he's 1-1 now. So what more can you say? It was perfect. It's an ideal start, and particularly at home where we have struggled to put teams away or to even pick up points, particularly towards the end of last season, to get off on the early foot and take advantage of a set piece like that's can only help us going forward as the season goes on.
Absolutely. Marty, we'll go on in a minute to talk about the defence in more detail, but I thought Fernandez did reasonably well coming in from the cold. He's actually on FOTMOB the highest rated player on the team with an 8.3, just ahead of Tav at 8.2. He obviously got himself his goal, but what did you think of him defensively overall?
I actually expect him to perform. Obviously, he's not had a lot of time for Rangers, obviously getting injured quite early on, but for the money, like I said in a previous pod, for the money, we all expected a better performance from when he got his opportunity, and I actually think we saw that today. Obviously, he got his goal, but as a centre back, I think he performed the best out of the two centre backs, and he obviously showed he can win the ball, whether it's defensive or attacking, and that was quite pleasing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I thought it was a decent start from him, and obviously going into a period we're going to be without our first choice defenders, so it's good to see him potentially coming onto a game, especially as we'll get onto with this jock. We continued to play well for another few minutes after that goal. Maybe almost another 10 minutes. There was some really good play from Danilo that set Gassama off, but he ended up being offside. I think the only piece of neat play I saw from Asgard around about 15 minutes, also releasing Gassama. Gassama, I thought, ended up a little selfish. He sort of cut in twice and ends up putting the ball high and wide. But then after that, it's a goal we've seen 101 times, unfortunately, particularly this season. We're on the attack. St. Mirren win the ball. Boy takes one look up, launches it high and far. The centre backs have been split. Giga's left 1-on-1 with his man, who outpaces him and slips the ball in. Just like that, it's 1-1.
Yeah, that's first thing I put in the group chat was that we are so back because that's just the standard Rangers goal to concede at Ibrox. Even away as well. You know that. Let's say we're pressing up high up the park. That's sort of the style of football that we need to play to try and break the low block. We'd have to commit people forward, and we're always open to a long ball over the top, especially with a team that's got pacey players. This one just happened to be straight down the middle. Probably poor communication between the two centre backs as to who's going to deal with it. But can you really fault a brand new centre back pairing that's only been put together? Have they worked on something like that in the training ground? We don't know. But again, nobody deals with it. We don't have the pace between the two players to deal with it. And credit to the Livingston player, he's tucked it away. And it's just something that I think we need to be really susceptible to and just get touch tight to your man, or at least talk to each other and say, look, you pick him up and we'll close the gap, we'll get narrowed together. Because if the ball goes over the top into a channel, at least you've got a bit of time to recover, because it's not going to be straight through and goal. Whereas this case, it's ball straight through the middle, they're split like that hot knife through butter, and then we're paid back, and from that point on, and the game was a real struggle for us.
Yeah, Marty, I thought that the Livingston goal really knocked the confidence out of the team. Like we said, we were knocking it about quite nicely for the first 10, 15 minutes. And then Livingston equalised, and it just immediately, they just started to look shaky. They needed an extra touch on the ball. The more touches they needed, the easier it was for Livingston to get a foot in here and there and nip the ball back. And although I think, as the half went on, ultimately controlled the game, we weren't really creating clear-cut chances because there was a lack of quality in terms of the final ball. And just throughout that whole half, I just had it in my head, and it did happen once or twice. A Livingston player would win it back from one of our attacks and pop one of those balls forward, and it just felt like at any minute they could basically score a carbon copy.
Well, we can't get away from it. It's been a regular theme for us so far. Long ball over the top, and our defenders are clueless as to what's going on. I don't want to beat on Jigga, but I mean, come on, the guy's closest to him, and Aloy's in the middle of the two centre backs. It's his ball to be there to be won, and he's just let the guy get away from him and then had to chase him down. It's sloppy defending. It's bog standard defending, really. I mean, a 60-yard ball and you're being outdone by it. Granted, the guy was quick, but come on, basic defending. Make sure you communicate with your fellow defenders around you and make sure you clear the lines. But it's a sloppy goal to give away, and it's been a regular occurrence for us and rather too frequent for my liking. But again, it's something that should be worked on in the training ground, and we shouldn't see that. I understand that it's a new partnership at the back, but that's basic defending, and that should be cut out in training and make sure that we don't concede goals like that, because it's been far too often this season, and I'm sure Danny's had to look at the games previous from him joining, and it's a regular occurrence for us, and we really, really need to pack it in. I mean, there was chances in the second half as well, which were very, very similar.
Yep, Jock, as I say, the remainder of the second half, there's not really a huge amount to talk about. There's a couple of half chances here and there. As I say, they have another couple of balls over the top here and there, but no one really does anything major. One thing I wanted to talk about, though, was Gassama. I felt in the first half, he's on the ball a lot. We were focusing our play we were quite obviously focusing play down the wings and quite predominantly down that left wing. He was on the ball a lot. I thought he was decent, and most of the time he certainly doesn't lack the confidence to go up against players, but there were times where, for all his pace, I felt like he slowed down some of our attacks with his decision making, because he would get the ball, he would kind of move forward, but then we'd get to that point where he either is going to drive out wide, he's going to cut inside, or try a pass, and he just seems to sort of pause for two seconds or so while he's trying to figure out what he wants to do, and I felt like that slowed us down at times when we had sort of positive looking breaks.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that it's not just a Gassama problem. That's an Ant-Man problem. That's it's a central midfield problem. It's those up front, and it's not just this season's team's problem. This has been something that's been a problem for Rangers for years. Is the slow, lethargic play and not taking advantage of the positional change whenever the match shifts and there's a counter attack or something on. But if you look at it from Gassama's point of view, I'm seeing people in the comments saying there he doesn't lift his head, but I think the problem is when he does lift his head, all he's seen is a wall of yellow, because they've got that many people back. The space that he has to drive into, the time he decides he's going to drive, like he maybe makes a move to try and trick the defender and then he goes again, that space is getting smaller and smaller because they're getting more compact. And they're getting more people behind the ball. It's a frustration part of his game, but it's what we have to try and unlock is to try and get the potential, because he has the potential to beat men one-on-one. He can beat one, he can beat two. We've seen it, particularly in European games, whenever he has the space to run in behind and get into those channels, and he beats one man and he's got that bit of space to look up and put the ball in. What we did today was constantly cross the ball into the box, and they just ate them up. That's why I'm looking at the stats here. We had 2 shots on target. They had 2 shots on target, and we had 9 shots overall, because we were just lumping the ball into the box, hoping for the best, because we saw that yellow wall and we just weren't able to deal with it. And Ant-Man was the same. Some of the things that we're trying on either side just didn't come off for us. And again, it's a struggle that Danny Roll has to try and suss out with what he's got at the moment before obviously the new sort of recruits come in January. It's not something we haven't faced before. It's just we need to try and unlock this again with what we have at the moment.
Yep. Marty, Jock touched on Ant-Man there, and Great Wall here mentioned something that I picked up as well. Why Ant-Man seems to cut in a lot. At one point, he cut in so far, he ended up on the opposite side of the pitch, because he kept kind of just nipping past a player and ended up just, as I say, walking from one side of the pitch to the other. One of the best assists he has, or one of his best moments, was a ball out wide. He ran onto right almost to the line and then cut it back for Gassama to head in. But he just doesn't seem to. It feels like that's been a one-off. Do do you think we're not getting the best out of him in terms of the fact that he keeps cutting in? Do we need someone to sit him down and tell him to try and be more of an orthodox winger?
No, I think we've got the best out of that man that we'll see. I don't think we'll see much better than what we've got from him. I think my concern is that you're playing a left-footed player on the right wing, and obviously the natural thing for him to do, a bit like Gassama, is to come in and either take a shot on or dink a cross into the back. But for me, it's quite poor play. I mean, it's obvious the way that Livingston were going to be set up. They're where they are in the league for a reason, and it was. Although I agree with what Jock says about Ant-Man, my problem was more with Gassama. I mean, if you look at that first offside, he's on the left-hand wing. He can see across that whole line, and he was still offside. That's unforgivable as a winger. You can't be watching the line and still be offside when the ball's passed to you. It's just, and it wasn't the first either. I think it was 2 or 3 that he got caught off offside. It's not going to help us pass the ball forward and give those at the back the confidence to give you the ball if you're. If you look at from when they scored, there was a little bit of a loss of confidence where we were taking that extra pass, that extra touch, and I do think it's a problem when your wingers are cutting in. That's their first port of call, is to cut in. You need somebody that will actually, whether it's both feet or the foot for the side they're on, actually run down the line. Change it up a little bit. But when you've got Gassama running against you, or even Ant-Man, you know what their intentions are. It's to run you down the line a little bit and then cut in. And it's too frequent. They need to change it up a little bit, and it's a problem that we seem to have got ourselves into with the way we're playing with wingers, and it's unfortunate because I do think we can get more from them and get more goals from. The intentions are with the formation that we're playing and where the players are with the obvious. I think for me it's rather obvious as to what's going to happen when you're playing players on the wings that are the opposite foot to the wing they're on. So something needs to change with the wingers and how we play.
Well, I would know, as I think a couple of people have mentioned in chat, Ant-Man is actually right-footed, so he's on the right. He is on the right side for the foot he plays, which is one of the things I think that confuses me about why he cuts in. Andrew's asking here, how did he play in the Eredivisie? I mean, he did a bit of both. He does like to cut in, but a lot of his assists were those more traditional balls where he crosses in, like, as I say, an orthodox winger would. But as I say, he does have that kind of want to cut in quite a lot as well. So I think it's something that the problem in the Eredivisie is when he cuts in the Eredivisie, he's space to run into. Yep. Whereas in Scotland, he's cutting in, and like Jock said a minute ago, he's meeting a wall of yellow jerseys because you're facing players that are packed, because that was what Livingston did. They packed the centre of the pitch and basically went 1-on-1 against our kind of midfield and attacking line. And so there's very little space in and about there. Asgard, Jock, I was going to move on to him next. I thought he had a really poor game today. Obviously, it was absolutely no surprise to me that he got subbed off. He was right in that middle where, it is congested. There's a lot of players. Livy are trying to keep it tight, and as I say, to their credit, they did very well in doing that. They were nicking the ball constantly in that kind of area. That's where we really need, that player who can be creative and just, nip balls past the person or nip around a person and keep the possession, get their head up and then find something. And it just wasn't happening from Asgard at all today.
No, I did feel sorry for him, and he's getting absolute pelters in the comments. And I can understand why, because like you said, every time the ball came to him, he wasn't able to do anything with it. Like you say, we need somebody who can just sort of read the game better and know that whenever the ball comes into him, to know what touch to take to open up that space, just to try and give him that extra bit of time to either find a pass or allow somebody to run off him if he can hold the ball up. But he just wasn't able to do that. As you say, they went man for man, and but then in that channel there could be two there. They doubled up on him at times as well. So it looked horrendous sitting watching it. It did look horrendous, like a horrible performance. But I just think that they knew how to sort of handle him, and I think that's just probably a bit of inexperience coming up against what he's come up against it in that position. You need that. You need somebody like you say that has that bit of quality that can just do something, just shift the weight and roll somebody and just be that bit quicker and that bit sharper. And it just didn't look like that today. And credit to the manager again. Whenever he sees things like that and players can't adjust to it or are just not performing, he's not scared to make changes even at half time. If that's not worked, he's right, okay, that's not worked. We'll rip that up. We'll try something new. And we have that in this manager, which is a good thing to see, because I think if that's Russell Martin, if that's Philip Clement, if that's Beale, we'd be still sitting screaming for him Asgard to come off in maybe 75, 80 minutes, because they'll just stick with the premise that he's a decent enough player, he might be able to do something, he'll produce a moment. We just didn't get that from him today.
Absolutely, and of course halftime came and off Asgard went. Miovski came on. He went into the outright striker position, and Danilo came and was dropped into that 10. Marty, for me, I thought that was a good move, because I felt like in the first half, Danilo, he was quite isolated. I saw a couple of people sort of saying that he wasn't any good in the first half. I actually thought he was reasonable, but he was quite isolated, and because the balls were focused down the wings, and he was having to drop deep to get on the ball. And when he did, I thought he did create certain things. I had that chance for Gassamath when he was offside, things like that, and it was okay. So I thought it made a lot of sense dropping him into that position. But were there any other changes you'd have liked to have seen at halftime, or did you think that was enough to be doing at that point?
Well, I think the first two changes that the manager made says it all about the performance of those two players. I do briefly want to agree with Jock of, I know Asgard's getting a lot of stick at the minute, but the way he plays doesn't seem to suit our style of play at the minute, and I think that's where he's getting caught. And obviously, like Jock says, when you've got two men running at you and you've not really got a lot of choice, there's only one outcome from that. So I do agree with Jock there. He is having a little bit of a hard time at the minute, but hopefully with changes that the manager plans to make, that he can come good and actually show a little bit more of who he's actually meant to be. But I do wholeheartedly agree with the first two substitutions. I don't agree with the half-time substitution. I think I just don't like that tactic. And obviously, Danny seems to like that. It's happened quite a few times under his management already. But I do agree with the first two players off, that they were isolated and they weren't really that involved in the game after Livingston got the equaliser. So I do agree with that. I think the switch for Miovski obviously showed its potential with the header that Miovski had, that he put just over. I think he got a little bit more on the ball than he expected. That's probably why it went where it did. Barami coming on, I actually think showed that he can influence the game, and he actually done more in the 35 minutes he had than Ant-Man done in the 64 that he had. So there's decisions for the manager to make in the upcoming games, especially the European game, as to who he plays out wide, and Asgard in the middle and dropping out wide and things. I think that was a little bit of a struggle for him. But I do agree with yourself, Doug, that Danilo seemed to drop deep a lot to try and get to the ball, and being that shadow striker is probably a better position for him than being the out-and-out striker. But I think with our current situation with strikers, I don't think he had a choice in that first half. Miovski coming on obviously helped him out a little bit, but I would personally like to see him in behind an out-and-out striker, because I think he can link up the play a little bit better. And obviously we've seen that a little bit more from him when he was dropping deep to try and win the ball.
Absolutely. Jock, just jumping back into the first half for a second, I wasn't going to mention it because I didn't really think it was much as such, and it wasn't made much as such during the game either. But there's a bit of a convo in the chat there about the possible Livingston penalty. So this was around about 20-ish minutes, 20-something minutes in, kicking the ball forward, and it hits. Now, first and foremost, like 100% hits Magoma's hand. There's no doubt of that. I don't think it's quite clear the ball hits his hand. But to me, it's not a penalty. It doesn't fit the rules for penalty. It's not a deliberate handball. He doesn't move his hand in any way, and he hasn't touched it in a way that's by making his body unnaturally bigger. I think to use the correct parlance, his hand is by his side, as it would be for obviously walking along. So to me, I didn't think there was anything to it. There were a couple of replays, but nobody on the pitch really seemed to make much of it that I could see. Obviously, VAR didn't intervene. What were your thoughts? Were Livy unlucky there, or was that
I think in this day and age, and the state of the way the handball rules interpreted, and there's that many different, as you say, variations, and where your hands have to be, and there's natural positions, and there's just all this garbage terminology that IFAB keep throwing at us to try and justify, how to play the game and what's a handball and what's not these days. I mean, for me, as I say, the rules change that much and that often that it's hard to keep up with what's what. I always go by player reaction, and if there's not much reaction on the pitch from it, then people are just going to carry on and they don't think too much of it. But if the players are going apoplectic on the pitch and they're screaming and they're surrounding the referee, then there's a case to be answered, or at least the VAR team have to answer that case. And the fact that it didn't even go to a VAR check for me, then I just never thought too much of it. To be fair, when I first initially I thought he's just sort of his kind of like his hip, and he's kind of ran on with it. But obviously looking at it closer in the replays, though you didn't see much of it, it does look to hit his hand. But the rules are what they are at the moment in this current interpretation of them, so you just have to go with that.
What about yourself, Marty? The chat seems to be about 70-30 not penalty, but there are a couple there that think it is.
Well, we can all agree that in this day and age, with the way that VAR work and the way that the rules are written, that could have gone either way. There's no doubt about that. There's times where you'd go, that's not a penalty, and it has been given. So it was one of them for me. It was me personally being involved in football. I wouldn't have given that. I would have been rather disappointed if it had been given as a penalty, because there's not much you could actually do about it. I mean, if you look at the distance from the ball to where it hit, there's not a fat lot in that, and it's not like it directly impacted the play. It's not a goal scoring opportunity. It didn't have a major impact. So for me, I would have been incredibly disappointed if a penalty had been given there. For me, it was a play on moment, and the fact that there was no players that were really asking for it said a lot as well. Because normally when the players are asking for a penalty, for them it's a little bit more blatant. But for me, that was. It was one of those situations where I could see it being given, but I was in the hope that it wasn't, because for me it wasn't a penalty.
Absolutely, agree here. I'll stick with you, Marty. Going back to the second half, Miovski came on. I thought he started quite well almost immediately. Tav had a cross in to Miovski, heads just over. I thought he moved about quite a lot. He was very quick to chase down balls, I think, as well, which we'll come to for the goal later on. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good run out for him. He made a good show of himself, obviously coming on, and we've been looking for more from our defenders. And albeit he doesn't get a goal, but he is involved in the goal. So overall, what were your thoughts on Miovski?
I actually think he had a good game when he came on. I think our style of play today helped him a little bit more. I mean, if you look at when he played at Aberdeen, it was the running behind that he was quite good at, and that's what we seem to see a lot of from him today. He can do better, but there's obviously been an improvement there from previous, and as long as he keeps improving, I'd be quite happy with that. He done well overall when he came on for me. Excuse me. And he was obviously a better option than the Asgard that he replaced.
What about yourself, Jock? Do you think Miovski had a decent shift today?
Yeah, positive impact. All you can really ask for, because he got the goal in international during the week as well, which probably does his confidence a bit of good and getting, sets him up coming into the game, but not starting. But obviously when he comes on, he does a shit, and he done that from day one when he first came in, and in the Old Firm game earlier in the season. He was only in the team, and he ran his socks off around himself on the ground, chasing lost causes and putting defences under pressure. That's all you can really ask of the guy. He has a chance for the header. If he scores, that's a crack. It's a hell of a goal if he does score it. I think it's a bit harsh saying he should score it. He still has a lot to do with the chance, but he still, he comes close. So as in there, you can see what he does bring to the team. And he's got that ability, and he's got that work ethic as well, which I think some of the other players could maybe look at and maybe try and emulate. That would probably help their cause with some of the fans' opinions of themselves, because there's a lot of them that aren't putting that same output that he is. So he was brought in for the fee he was brought in. He's not a main striker, he's a squad player, he's going to contribute, and he's done that today. It's all you can really ask of the guy. Just more goals would be appreciated, but a game where you've only had 2 shots on target, you're going to struggle, aren't you?
Absolutely. Jock, staying with you, the next substitute that we made was to take off Oliver Antman and bring on Nedim Bajrami. William here is saying Bajrami should be starting over Asgard every game of the week. I do think he came in and he played reasonably well. Again, within a few minutes, he had a great break down the left-hand side, puts Gassama through, who fails to capitalise on the opportunity. And he had another couple of sort of similar breaks like that. Is that another player that you think is pushing on the door to maybe get more starts?
I think so. I hope so, because he's an international player, and you want your team full of international players because they have that extra bit of quality, because they're playing different types of games. They're not just playing the SPFL football; they're playing international games, which you're playing against the best of the best when it comes to that kind of level. And we haven't really seen much of him under Danny Rowe. Really, it was only sort of even pre-season games and early European games. The qualifiers were Russell Martin was still trying to sort of figure out who he wanted in his team and who could sort of fit in where. He can play multiple roles. He has pace. He does have good technical ability. He can score goals. We have seen that, not as much as we all would like, but he certainly can contribute, and he certainly has more to give this Rangers team. That's for sure, because he's another one of these guys who's come in on a decent contract, not really produced much. So if we were looking to try and get any sort of money for him, the next 12 months, ideally he needs to be playing, needs to be contributing and showcasing what he can do. So I do hope to see more, because there's ability and there's talent there. It's just a matter of trying to get the best out of it and trying to find a place for him in this team.
Absolutely. Just before I come to you, Marty, so I say, if anyone's watching right now and you're not subscribed to the channel, then please do so. I've got content out every day of the week, pretty much, for Rangers, including post and pre and post match content, tactical analysis on the lowdown, and we've got loads of great scouting stuff coming up this week as we get closer and closer to the January window. You'll find all the best players from world football will be reviewed by the Rangers Journal, so keep an eye on those videos that will be coming out this week. We're going to be looking particularly at players who are coming to the end of their contracts, and so potentially could be snapped up for cheap. So do keep an eye out for those videos this week, as well as our regular content. Hit the notification bell, and that will tell you whenever any of our videos go live. Marty, what were your thoughts on Bajrami today?
I think it was a good substitution. I mean, if you look at what Antman was providing Rangers, he struggled in that game today, and Bajrami gives a different tactic, a different approach to the game. I think he's one of them that could possibly come under the category of underutilised at Rangers in his time. He's obviously shown when he has got opportunities more often than not. Don't get me wrong, he has had some howling games, but more often than not, he does perform, and he does give Rangers a different output to the players that he's replaced, which is obviously what we needed in that second half, because that second half to that point was pretty poor, if I'm honest. So I was glad to see Bajrami come on for Antman. And as you says, he did create opportunities, like you mentioned, for Gassama, but obviously it came of nothing from it. But he definitely gives a different outball for Rangers, which I think is at this moment in time what we're needing. You're on mute, Doug.
That's my yellow card now for this one. I think I'll get a yellow card in the first one as well. Yeah, I definitely think I'd be interested to see some changes in the upcoming games. People have mentioned Cameron in the chat as well. Obviously, he didn't give much time today to show much, but he was buzzing about. And again, I'm a big fan of him. I do hope he gets more opportunities. Pushing on into the game, we had a couple of chances as sort of we ticked into the 60, 70 minutes. There's a wasted long shot from Magoma resulting from a corner where he could have put it out wide for another crossing chance. We had another great break from Bajrami. 70 minutes, we then had a big save from Jack Butland. Tav looked like he kind of lost his footing slightly, and he gets a big nudge from one of the Livingston players, which lets the ball free. But Butland comes to our rescue there and keeps the game equal. Then a pause for a bit of a head knock. Fernandez and Mohamed Silla both went down. Looked a little bit of a nasty one, but luckily both players looked like they were okay. Fernandez continued on, thankfully. I was a little bit worried for a second that was going to be another defender we'd lose, but thankfully he was back on his feet. And Silla looked like he was okay as well, although he does get subbed off at that point. Then a few minutes after that, we make the breakthrough. Another, at this point, I think it's just a classic ball from deep from Tavernier. Picks it up, floats it up and over the whole of the pitch, basically. Miovski runs onto it. I think Miovski Jock does really well because he doesn't pull out of the tackle with the goalkeeper. Gets a toe, literally just a toe, to push it out wide to where Diomande is sitting and can knock it into an empty net, which was originally flagged as offside. Doom and gloom for a moment, but then VAR, for a change, intervened to our benefit and came on and corrected what was miles onside. I don't know how the linesman ever thought anything else, but as I say, quality ball from Tav, good run, good tackle from Miovski, and Dio just had a nice easy tap in.
Yeah, well, I mean that's it. It's, as you say, it starts with Tav, doesn't it? Tav, does that raking long ball, you say, from deep that we've seen for a decade now, really, isn't it? And causes teams all sorts of problems, especially a team that they were sort of quite happy sitting, wasting time for a point, and then we get the rub of the green. It's that's what VAR's there for, to check for those decisions, to make sure they are correct, and that we get the correct outcome, in which we got the correct decision stood. It's a goal. It's not controversial in any way at all, and that's why we have it. So the system pays dividends for us there, and then that really forces Livingston's hand to come out and start playing football and stop the time wasting and start trying to play football again. And their managers going nuts on the touchline because we're time wasting, which I thought was quite rich, considering they've been doing it for the best part of an hour up until that point. Once they got the equaliser, they had no interest in playing any football, really. So yeah, again, it highlights the importance of VAR whenever it's used correctly, and it can get the correct decisions from the correct outcomes and that. And it ultimately leads us to the 3 points today, which is all we care about.
Absolutely. Marty, Dado's coming in. Cheers, Dado, a regular viewer, saying Tav done nothing again. Now, I always like to check myself because I know I'm a Tav fanboy, probably got a bit of the blue tinted specs when it comes to Tavernier. But in my opinion, Tav was one of the best players on the park today. He was all over the pitch, as he tends to be, particularly in games where we are struggling. You always see him pushing forward, trying to make things happen. The only person on the pitch who has more touches than he does is Raskin. And in my opinion, the only actual quality crosses that we had all game all came from Tavernier. About 3 or 4 of them, obviously including the goal, which is why I'm bringing it up now. And I don't mean this as a point to big up Tav. I more mean this as a point to our poor recruitment. That, 2025, this day of our Lord, 10 years into Tavernier's career, I still don't think we've managed to bring in a player other than Borna Barisic, who, rivals Tavernier's consistency of quality of crosses, which is why we struggle to make chances. And as I say, I'm not saying that to big up Tav. We've talked about his pros and cons to death, but when we're talking about the wider players, Ant-Man, Gassama, Asgard, these are the players that are meant to be the creative players in the team that should be contributing to that should be taking that onus away from our right back. And again, we've just failed to bring in a player of a level that has that quality that I think the team really needed today to make this game more comfortable.
I do agree with your comments there, Doug. I think Rangers and the recruitment for a future replacement for Taff has been absolutely rotten. The only one that we had, we sold to Everton, and we've never really looked at recruiting somebody to replace Tavernier in the future, and I think that's quite poor from the club. I know he's the club captain, but he's obviously getting on in years now, and I think it's rather unfair for a guy of his age, and obviously his stamina level will start to decrease as well, to be playing every minute of every game. I think that's unacceptable from a club. It doesn't show gratitude to the captain. I don't think he played his best game today, but I agree with you, he certainly was the man to produce the crosses that Rangers needed. And there's nobody on a level that will match him that's currently in the club. And I think that's, again, a poor recruitment than anything else, because there's been plenty of time to bring in players of quality to fight for the position against Tav, and to, even on the opposite side, to put in decent balls. And as you said, Barisic was the only one that we could really compare him to that was decent at a cross. And again, it brings me back to the summer. We had an opportunity, new manager, new owners, bring in decent quality to bring a decent ball in the box. But again, we failed to do it, and we're having to rely on the man that's been at the club for so many years and is getting on in his years to produce the goods. And that's not good enough for a club like us. But Tavernier, to his credit, has stepped up and has been the leading man. And I think across the defence, he was probably the second best rated across the defence behind Fernandes. So that says a lot when the most experienced player you've got in the club is having to do quite a lot of the hard work, the hard graft. And that's unfortunate for the position that we're in. And we really, really need to sort that and very quickly, because if we're not going to give him a new contract, which so far we haven't, we really need to look at a sustainable player that will bring in the same, if not better, quality that he has, because so far we haven't managed that.
Absolutely, and Dado follows up with saying Tav's too slow. I don't disagree with you there, Dado. He has lost the pace over the years. I mean, the guy's 34. He's at the tail end of his career. He shouldn't be the quickest person in the team. Again, we should have, if we'd hired better, if we'd signed better, it wouldn't be as big of a problem. But I've made the point about a similar point about Moore over Curtis. Tav gets played because of how involved he gets in games, and because of how involved he gets, he will often make the difference in games. We don't win that game, in my opinion, today without Tavernier's impact, and that's why he keeps getting picked. And we need to sign more players that can do that on a regular basis. Someone mentioned in the corners about him taking every corner. We took 2 corners and we got a goal from 1, so that's a 50% hit rate. So that's a plus. If we can bring someone else in that has a good ball, then when we had Cherney in, Cherney was a good crosser of the ball from corners, and he took about a third of the corners that season. I think he took about 19 corners, and Tav took about 30 odd. So when we get the quality of player in, there will be changes, but I don't think we're bringing in the quality of player. Anyway, away from that, I'll end up this. It'll last for about 2 hours if we keep talking about Tavernier. So we get the goal. We then take off Magoma. I thought he played reasonably well. You want to come in on a point there, Marty?
Sorry, Doug. I do want to jump in just before you mention the goal. Gassama's chance in the 70th minute. Not even get that on target. It's not good enough for a player of Rangers quality. I mean, and if you look at the fact that they then attacked from that goal kick, and it took a one-on-one with Butland for Butland to save it to keep us, let's be honest, to keep us in the game. Gassama should be at least getting that on target. So, granted, we did start to finish the game a little bit better, but that's the kind of chances that Gassama should be at least hitting the target and working the goalkeeper. They're bottom of the league. Come on, work their goalkeeper. Putting it wide, come on. That's for me. That was a reason for him to then go off. So yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that because obviously you're going to talk about the goal, but Gassama should at least be hitting the target with that. And the fact that we only had 2 shots on target, like Jock said, says a lot for players like Gassama and that like to cut in and take shots. And that was one of them where he should have done a lot better than what he did.
Yeah, he had a couple of chances today that, again, it's that extra touch he seems to want to take, cutting in and just not quite taking the right decision, I think. Let's see which leads to him eventually going off. We'll get to in a minute, but just after the goal, we take off Magoma, who I thought had a decent shift. Someone mentioned in the comments as well, he did put a couple of decent crosses in as well, so I will make that. Max Aarons comes on at left back, but he did fine. It was okay. No major errors there, so that's fine. I think Aarons has been okay, to be fair to him, in recent times. It then gets to the point that we get to the end of the game. I think it was 8 minutes that was put up for injury time, and by that point, it's just hold on. We do have a couple of half chances there, but nothing major. We bring off Gassama and Diomande to put on Cameron and Barron on the 89th minute to help see out the game, which I think that both of them do, buzzing about and all that. But on 96 minute, Jock, because there always is one more little ass clincher as Livingston do get the ball into the box and at the back post. I can't remember which player it was, but he does get a good snatch at the ball, smashes it, and thankfully it sort of sails maybe a metre or so over the top. But could have all gone wrong right at the death.
Yeah, it could have. I mean, we've seen that record before, haven't we? I mean, it's one of those ones where, if it's 20 minutes of constant pressure and we're not doing anything about it and we're trying to soak it up at home, we've seen that movie. I don't know how many times. Thankfully, if this one flies over the bar, not be much all the same, not be much, and I don't think Butland's going to get anywhere near it because the boy hits it at some pace. But it's fine margins. It's one of those ones where it doesn't go in. We have the 3 points. It's the performance. It is what it is. But we managed to hold on. And I say we're four in a row now for the league. And I know somebody in the comments section, I think it was on Thursday night, was saying that a run for me is 20 games. Well, now we're on 4 instead of 3, so we're on our marching our way towards that. And this is those are the sort of ones that you grind them out and then you go into the next game and you can put a shift in the next game. With 3 home games and the bounce coming up, which we should good for the players, and it should be good for the crowd at Ibrox as well. Because they're due a couple of performances, so they're due to be entertained. Today wasn't one of those ones, but they'll come. They will come. I've no doubt about it. I say there'll be change in players over the January window as well, so there'll be fresh faces to come in as well. So they're it's come together. It's just obviously not come together as quick as we would like, obviously, with the start of the season we had, but we'll get there. I do believe we will.
Absolutely. And Marty Dono said a little bit earlier on, at the end of the day, we've played absolutely pish but won. Thank God we have Danny Rowe. That's not a game we would have won under Russell Martin. We had to battle through. I think we were reasonably composed throughout the second half, although there were a few chances here and there for Livingston, but nothing like absolutely major. I do think under Danny Rowe, let's just say we have a little bit more of that composure. We're finding ways to win. And at the end of the day, not a great performance, but we won the game. And like Jock says, that's now 4 in a bounce. We can now look at trying to make it 5 when we go to Falkirk. And crucially, it keeps pressure on the teams above us. Obviously, Celtic played this evening. So, it just keeps us pushing forward. And like Jock says, hopefully we start to play better as time goes on. But ultimately, the win's the main thing.
I agree that the 3 points, excuse me, the 3 points are the main important thing at this minute, and I think Danny made a point of that himself. He will look at getting points on the board, and then once the points are regular, then they'll start looking at how we play, and I think that's possibly the right approach. I think that you've made a fair point there, Doug, where in games past under the previous manager, we would have folded under that pressure, and we'd have either took a draw or lost the game. And the fact that we've had 4 wins in the bounce, 4 wins, which is 3 more than Russell ever managed in the league. So that's obviously a drastic improvement. We've got draws changed to wins, and I think that's a real mentality change in the players that Danny's obviously brought in. And that I sincerely hope that continues, because it shows that he's instilling a winning mentality amongst the players and the not give up attitude, which is obviously what Russell was lacking, and that's something that we need to continue and improve on. Hopefully the performances come later on once he's got his say on the team as such, because obviously he's going with a team he's inherited, and I think that the performances are showing that that's the team that he's inherited, but he's managing to get more out of them, to the extent that we're now actually winning games. And four games in a row he's now won in the league, and the gap that we were looking at the start of the season, where fans were going, oh, this is going to be dire, we might even get relegated, we're now joint third on the same amount of points as Hibs, and we've got a game in hand on them. So it's amazing the change that Danny's managed, and here I hope it continues. I do want to briefly touch on the the goal that Rangers got. I don't think if that was anybody else, they would have got that deft touch that Miovski got to give Diomande the goal. I don't think there's very many players in the team that could have managed that. And I think that's a mentality shift. I don't think we'd have seen that under Russell. So again, it's things that obviously Danny's worked on and he's improved to make sure that you lay everything on out there, and that's something that we should be building on. And like has been previously said, we've got a run of home games now. This is where we need to show our strength and start building. And it's on the run up to the transfer window. It will show Danny who's in and who's not, and the ones that aren't need to be shipped out and players brought in that are of quality, not just squad players, but of quality that will be fighting for that starting 11. And that's when we should hopefully look to start kicking on.
Absolutely. So to round up, Jock, the official man of the match today was given to Nicholas Raskin. Who would I can tell from your face that you're not going to be agreeing with that decision. I saw a few people saying that he didn't play very well. I thought he was fine, but I wouldn't have given him man of the match myself. Who would your man of the match be?
It's a good question, actually. I don't actually know, because nobody stood out really. Like say, Raskin was involved in much, but not that there was a much end product from it. He did the nitty gritty stuff. If to pick somebody off the top of my head, I'll probably go Magoma. Probably because he was solid. He had an impact on certain situations, particularly going forward. And for somebody that's so young, he's made that left back spot since he's came in. He's not really put a foot wrong. So I would have went to go for Magoma. We did his work quietly, without any sort of dramas.
Yep, it's a good shout there. A couple of people in the comments there, Marty going for Dio for getting the winner there, and I think he had a pretty good game all round as well. What about yourself? Who would your your man of the match be?
I think Dio is a pretty good shout, and obviously getting the winning goal gives him a leading edge. He was quite a busy player, and in that midfield section, which was obviously quite congested. But for me, for his first proper league game where he's actually made an impact, it'd have to be Fernandes. Give the young boy a bit of a boost. I mean, thrown in the deep end and gets the goal to get us the lead. I think that for me would sway it more than Diamonde's performance in midfield. Outside of that, I agree with Jock. There's not really much there. I do agree with Jock that our left back Magoma did have a good game, but for me, Fernandes for his first game in charge at centre back, because Jig is not in charge of that. Fernandes, for me, he would get the call.
Good, because you stole my thunder there. I was going to try and be sneaky and say, I'll give it to Fernandes rather than my first inclination, which is obviously to give it to Tavernier for one assist and a second assist. But yeah, I think Fernandes did well coming in, as you see, out of the blue. He played well, was the better of the two defenders, and Dio's a good shout as well. And yeah, Magoma, as I say, Magoma, I think he's settling into being that kind of solid and reliable fullback. You know, he's not amazing, but he's not terrible. He's just kind of, he plays, 6 or 7 out of 10 week to week. So, he's settling in. Definitely one of the better of the signings. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. Thank you to Jock and Marty for joining me. Lots to talk about, lots of great comments from everyone again. So thank you for tuning in. Again, if you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to see more from the channel, we've got loads of content coming in the upcoming week, and we'll have pre and post match stuff for both of Rangers games against Braga and Falkirk, as well as the lowdown. And as I said earlier, we've got some scouting videos coming out as we run towards the January window, so there'll be lots of exciting and interesting players for you to learn about from our scouting team. Big shout out to them. They've been putting a power of work in behind the scenes recently, and you will soon be seeing the well, in fact, there's already been one. They put out a video on the J League. There's a video on the K League coming out as well as the out of contract stuff as well. So loads of stuff from the scouting team. So big shout out to them. You'll see that stuff start to come out this week. Just leaves me to say, as I say, if you're not already subscribed, please do subscribe, and remember that every night is a Rangers Journal night. Thanks, guys.